The blood had soaked through and was starting to drip down her side. Her legs felt encased with cement with every step that she took, and her vision was blurring. I can't die out here. I have to keep going. Just when she felt she couldn't take another step, she saw the entrance and parking lot in the distance.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of Hollercast. We are really excited. We've got an amazing guest here that we have been talking to, for months now, trying to get coordinated to get her here in the studio, and we finally have her here. So, Chase, how's it going, man?
Good. I haven't been doing enough of these lately.
No, we've not. But we're getting back into it.
We're getting back into it. It's almost like life gets busy. You know what I mean?
It does. It gets incredibly busy.
It gets busy. God, this summer's been...
Yeah, it really has been.
When I look back, I was thinking back about it yesterday. Just, I don't know. I feel like yesterday it was like April.
Yeah.
And then now it's
yeah
heading into fall. There was a slight, I know.
It makes me sad.
It was a little chipper this morning.
It was. It was weird. When I went to work, it kind of felt like fall. And then I guess the mowing team came and mowed today.
Yeah.
So then I walked out and it was cool and smelled like fresh cut grass. And I was like, now it feels like springtime.
Right.
I didn't know what was happening.
I know, right? It's those little leaves that you see falling from the trees.
Oh, I hate it. I hate winter.
Hey, it's all right. Get back into it. Bundle back up. I got the long sleeves on.
It's terrible. I hate it. I hate everything about it.
But no, you're correct. We have been talking to this fine lady for a while, and she is very important to me.
Yeah.
I've reached out to her several times for things. Miss D. Harrison, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here, guys.
Welcome. Our pleasure.
Well, we've talked about, we do these kind of just by ourselves. Every once in a while we'll do one that's just us talking or whatever, and I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about mental health and some of those.
We do.
And you are the lady to go to about that. So can you tell us a little something about yourself, where you're from, where you came from, what brought you here to Spruce Pine and to the area, and your background as a mental health professional?
Sure. I moved here in 2000 from New York. Not in the city. I lived in the suburbs of New York, about an hour from the city. And the first 11 years that I was here, I worked in Marion in public mental health. And the agency I was working for moved away, and I just had to make some choices. And I decided to open my own private practice here in Spruce Pine. I'm dually licensed. I do mental health, substance abuse. I've got separate certifications in grief, trauma, sex offenders, anxiety disorders, gambling. I'm registered with the state of North Carolina to help with problem gambling.
Okay.
So in other words, if somebody calls that 800 number for problem gambler, they're going to get me. Right. And forensic counseling.
I was going to ask you about that. I saw that on your biography. What exactly is forensic counseling?
Basically, it's working with the criminal mentality.
Okay.
It's people that are prone to erroneous thinking, to criminal thinking. Mm-hmm. That's always been kind of a passion of mine.
I got you. Yeah, I know that. I saw that on there, and I thought that was very interesting. I didn't know that about you, actually. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that was one of your specialties.
Yeah.
So, but that... Go ahead, John.
Oh, no. I was just going to say a lot of antisocial personality disorders involved in that.
Of course.
Psychopathy, sociopathy.
Mm-hmm. And like you and I were talking before this broadcast, when I first moved to North Carolina, I worked in the prison system for a while. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely what you're dealing with in that kind of population, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so wild to me. When I learned that people who suffer from those ailments, their brains are literally physiologically different than ours, and that was something that was hard for me to grapple with there for a minute.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me though. Like when we talk about that, like you think about people like a lot of these serial killers and stuff like this. Like there's a lot of times there's no markers. Who was the famous one? There was one. Was it John Wayne Gacy? That was grew up like completely normal. or seemingly normal.
Oh, sure. A lot of them. I mean, Bundy from everything I've read about Bundy, they said he was one of the most charming, charismatic people you'd ever want to encounter.
Yeah.
Well, you would just think that somebody that would have that has that type of ruthlessness and stuff, you would think, my first thing is, well, let's go back and look where they came from, because there's got to be a reason. But there's literally not a reason, other than the fact that their brains are just completely wired differently. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, they may have a predisposition to those kind of behaviors, but, part of my fascination has always been the why.
Right.
I don't believe that many people are born just killers.
Right.
Are there some, of course, but not as the norm. Something happened to alter their way of thinking.
Right.
To to make them, where they had antisocial personality disorders, or they had that total pathology where they didn't have any kind of conscious.
Right.
Yeah.
Total lack of empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that sort of this interest of yours in this side of the mental health coin, that's kind of what led to the book writing?
Yes.
To being an author?
Yes.
So tell us, give us a little brief rundown of the 2 books that you've authored so far, and you've got a brand new one just on Amazon, right?
Yes. I've always, since I've been probably a teenager, I've always wanted to write, and I just kind of lacked the, I don't know what the word is I want to use. I guess the confidence to do it.
Gotcha.
Understood. Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll write it and I'll sit there and collect dust.
Right.
And David, my husband, really encouraged me. He says, you can do anything you choose to do. Put your mind to it.
Wow.
And he was my supporter. Go for it. And I did, and I was really thrilled when the first publisher I submitted the first manuscript to wrote back and said, hey, yeah, we want this.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
That's what happens when you forget to turn your phone off.
Oh,
and you get in a hurry.
Lord.
You know how it goes. You know how it goes. Yes. So where was I going here? This is why you don't turn your phone on and leave it, because it completely breaks conversation.
Your books are murder mystery?
They're murder mystery, FBI,
true crime.
Not true, not true.
Fiction.
FBI, serial killer kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
I've always been a little bit, early, my very young youth, I've always been kind of fascinated by these kind of things. But I always used to feel like, okay, so these movies and these TV shows, they'd be like, okay, he's the bad guy, let's catch him. But why is he the bad guy?
Right.
Understood.
What made him the bad guy? And then back, I don't know, what was it, 15, 20 years ago, I guess, the TV series Criminal Minds came out. And that was my show.
Yeah.
I was like, just get out of my way. Criminal Minds is on, because that was the first show that I ever recognized actually got into the why. And I think that was a big motivator for me, with my books.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What sort of sense of accomplishment is there when you get done with an actual book? Because I know so many people are like, I'm like, you should write a book, or they're like, I should write a book about this. I'm like, yeah, you should, but nobody ever does it. Like,
I should never write a book. Ever. Don't ever tell me I should write a book. It will never get done.
I don't either. Mine would be one like run-on sentence just the entire time. The editor would take one look at it and be like, oh my God. But so there has to be a giant sense of accomplishment to get done with something like this and have it published, right?
Yes. The unfortunate part was that my main supporter passed away before my first book actually was in my hands.
I understand.
I mean, he knew that it was... When I signed the contract with my first book, it took them 1.5 years before, with all the proofreading and the editing and this and that and everything, to... I don't know why it was such a long process. So
right.
He had passed by the time the books actually came onto the shelves.
I understand.
With the second book, it only took a few months. I don't know what the difference was. Maybe because it was my first, or I don't know.
Right.
So as far as a sense of accomplishment, yes, but it was a little bittersweet.
I understand.
If you understand what I mean.
Did his passing motivate you to continue on the series and write the second book?
I think so. I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and, I'd ask you before this, if I could ask you about this, and we'll come back to the books, but a lot of people deal with grief in that way, and I know that's tough to deal with, even as a mental health professional. What can you say about that process? Can you speak on the process of grieving the passing of a spouse?
Just to be kind to yourself. I tell people all the time that, give yourself as much space and be as patient with yourself as you would be with your best friend. I mean, one of the things that I hear people say so much, like, okay, it's been a year, I need to get over this crap now. No, you don't. You will get over it when you get over it, and you never get over it.
Sure.
I kind of, the analogy that I use sometimes is like, back, I don't know, I think it was 2017 or 18, I fell and I broke my shoulder. And they don't really do anything for a broken shoulder. They just tell you to live with it and let it heal. They don't even, they don't even put it in a sling because they don't want it to freeze up, And so for the first few weeks, it was excruciating. I just move and I want to scream. It was bad pain. And then as time went on, it became kind of an ache, as long as I didn't move it too much, it kind of ached. And then, 6 months went by, a year went by, and it didn't hurt at all. But to this day, if I reach for something the wrong way or lift something too hard, heavy over my head or something, it'll hurt. And I feel like emotional pain and loss is the same kind of thing.
God, it's a great analogy.
Sure. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It hurts like hell in the beginning, and then it becomes a dull ache. It's always there. You're always aware of it. And then you might not think about it for a couple of days, and all of a sudden something comes back hits you like a ton of bricks.
Sure.
And there it is again.
Well, even the analogy is that you don't put it in a sling because you have to move. If you don't talk about it and you keep it inside, it's just going to fester and atrophy and affect you even more,
What was it like going through that grief as a practitioner, knowing what you do about grief and, that being a huge part of your career, helping people deal with grief? What was it like actually going through it as a practitioner?
Well, initially when I first went back to work after, I only took a few weeks off because I had people that were depending on me,
Sure.
And I wouldn't take any referrals for grief for a while because I just didn't feel like it would be ethically sound for me to do that,
Gotcha.
I would over-identify or, and then over time, I was able to. And I felt like it gave me, I had empathy. I've lost before, so this wasn't my first,
Right.
And I always knew I had empathy for the grieving, but this, by me sometimes being able to self-disclose and to tell them, hey, this is what I went through, and then that would give them that kind of like, oh, wow, you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm not quoting out of a textbook here, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a step beyond empathy. You're actually sympathizing with them over that.
Yeah.
Well, I know, when I've been in counseling before in the past, like, it's almost like you can tell. I feel like with some, you hit a certain subject with somebody and you can tell it's like they've lived that, without even having to ask or without them telling you that,
Yeah.
So we'll move on from that. Let's get back to the book.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask you that because I know, a lot of people deal with that, and it's something that's not talked about, openly. And I think it's important to do it. And I thank you for going there. But so getting back to the books, so the name of the first book is Darwin Was Right?
Yes. Where am I putting this over here?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yes, Darwin Was Right. And this book is based on Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. That it's the strong that survive. And can I read a chapter?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I printed it out in big print, so I did not have to put my glasses on.
There you go.
Okay. So where I'm going to start reading, Emmanuelle Bardet, is the FBI agent in charge of this case. She is kidnapped by the killer, and she's drugged and kidnapped by him. And his intention is he's going to drag her into the forest and kill her. The killer is the son of a old cold case that her father had, because her father was in the business too. Okay. So this chapter here starts where she managed to get away from her killer, and she's running for her life. Okay. So Emmy had been running for what seemed like an eternity. Her lungs felt like they were on fire, and her lungs felt like they were on fire, and her legs were shaky, making her feel off balance. But she knew her survival depended on her being able to keep moving. I can't go on much longer, she thought. But damn it, I'm not going to let him win. I'm stronger than this. Pushing with everything she had, she rounded a bend in the trail and saw a small cave and an overhead ledge. Scaling the shelf, she crawled inside the diminutive opening and collapsed. Twisting around, she realized she could see outside, but due to the angle of the entrance and the height of the ledge, it would be next to impossible for anyone to spot her. Shaking uncontrollably, she hid there, trying to regain normal breathing. Suddenly, she heard rustling and heavy breathing. Peeking out, she saw Wright, the killer, soaked in sweat. He was a bulky man and lacked the grace and flexibility that Emmy's petite body possessed. He stopped to lean against a large boulder to catch his breath, looking around as he did. Emmy froze, trying to keep her respirations as quiet as possible. Oh no, he's not leaving. Wright plopped into the ground with a big sigh, his chest heaving with exertion, his head oozing blood where he had been hit with the stick. Well, he definitely seems to be in worse shape than me, she thought. As she watched, he appeared to be falling into a sleep state. She waited until his breathing slowed down into what appeared to be a dozing pattern, and she decided it was now or never. Stealthily crawling forward, with her eyes never leaving her predator, she inched towards the edge of the ledge. She was almost there when suddenly a large bird landed on the ledge beside her. Emmy tried to silently shoo it away, but it stared at her blankly. As she became more aggressive with her hand gestures, the bird retaliated with a loud squawk and flew away. Unluckily, the sound aroused Wright, who with a grunt lumbered to his feet, and the two locked eyes. Pulling his pistol from his pocket, he started to climb towards her. When she scampered behind a substantial-sized boulder, he began firing shots. Emmy felt a searing pain as one of the shots grazed her upper arm. He was getting closer and closer. I am not going out like this, she contemplated. I am better than him. That bastard is not going to get me. With every bit of strength in her slight body, she shoved as hard as she could against the boulder. At first, it refused to budge. Filled with desperation, she took a deep breath and pushed as hard as she could. The rock suddenly broke free and rapidly rolled off the ledge. With a sickening crunch, the boulder landed on top of her pursuer. He lay there silently. Grimacing in pain and bleeding profusely from her arm wound, she cautiously descended from her perch and walked over to where Wright was lying. With one glance, it was obvious he was never going to get back up. Half delirious with pain, fatigue, and the after effects of whatever he had drugged her with, she started to walk up the trail towards what she hoped was the parking lot entrance. Although Emmy had wrapped her light jacket around her injured arm as a makeshift bandage, the blood had soaked through and was starting to drip down her side. Her legs felt encased with cement with every step that she took, and her vision was blurring. I can't die out here. I have to keep going. Just when she felt she couldn't take another step, she saw the entrance and parking lot in the distance. Relief flooded her, and she forced herself forward. Just a few more steps, just a few more, she silently urged herself. As she drew closer, the spinning in her head increased, and her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. Random thoughts raced through her head. I smashed that son of a bitch with a rock like the roadrunner does to Wile E. Coyote. Does Dad know that I'm here? Does anyone know I'm here? Am I going to die? As her mind grew foggier, she heard the sound of car doors slamming and people calling her name. Then blackness overtook her.
Gosh, Dee, you paint quite a picture.
Left
You just straight murked that son of a bitch.
Yes.
Yep.
So that was the Darwin.
Awesome.
Now my second book was kind of that crime is solved in that one. But like I said, the same main characters, the same good guys,
Yes.
are in this one and will be in the third one. And this one is called Pavlov's conditioning.
Awesome.
And while this one was about survival of the fittest, this one is about mind control and conditioned responses and that
Nice.
kind of stuff.
So, in what ways would you say that like mental health and stuff like that it shapes the way you do these books? I mean, I know I'm familiar with the concept Pavlov's dog, right? Mm-hmm. So you're those conditioned responses. So
Right.
that for those who are not familiar with that, can you explain Pavlov's dog real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
Ivan Pavlov was a Russian scientist back in, now you probably want to give me a year, late 1800s, I
Right.
believe, maybe early 1900s, who did some tests on conditioned responses. And he used dogs, and he would ring a bell. Mm-hmm. Some versions said he used a buzzer, some says ring a bell, and he would give them food. Mm-hmm. They'd come and give him food. And then he'd ring a bell and he'd give them food.
Yeah.
And then it just got to the point that he'd ring the bell and the dog would start to salivate. Like it was eating, because it was conditioned to anticipate the food. So in the Pavlov's conditioning, we're talking about people now that are being conditioned to do things they shouldn't do.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's a great angle to take.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know, we were before the podcast, before we started taping, we were talking about the insane amount of hours that we as Americans spend working. It's almost like we've been conditioned to do that.
Gosh, I would say. That's why I wake up at 6 o'clock even on Saturdays. Wide awake.
Yeah.
6 a.m., whether or not I'm trying to sleep in or not. It's the truth.
And do you find yourself feeling guilty if you're not being busy?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time.
Yeah.
I have a hard time just taking the day for myself.
Yeah.
That's because that's all we've ever known.
Yeah. I've gotten bitter about that lately. Just being like, it's okay to lay around and do nothing and be lazy for a day. I don't have to be constantly being productive.
Right. I struggle.
It's hard.
I struggle with that.
It is hard.
What other conditioned responses do we have? I know man, I've got ones from trauma in my past. I can tell you
All
that
of us
much.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about that the other day. Something happened. I swear to God, I thought about Pavlov's dog. I was like, oh, dude, that's for whom the bell tolls, man. For whom the bell tolls.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, in the book series, so that conditioned response, those conditioned responses that Emmy, the main character, has, that kind of helps shape the book and the way she reacts to events in the book.
Now, we're talking more about the conditioned responses of the perpetrators.
Okay.
Gotcha. And I noticed the perpetrators I read in the synopsis are domestic terrorists. That's juicy.
Oh. Okay.
That's juicy. I like that.
Okay.
I like that a lot. That's my kind of stuff.
So you
Sounds like an episode of Criminal Minds.
I thought, okay, you're going all Clancy on me here now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, goodness. So, you mentioned you're originally from New York. Did you practice in New York?
No.
No, you didn't.
No. I mean, I did my internships and stuff there.
I got
and then
you.
by the time I got done with those, I moved here.
I got you.
Yeah.
So your entire career has been in like small town, mental health and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something uniquely different about the psychology of people in a small town as opposed to a big city?
Oh, yes.
I mean, I guess that seems like an obvious question, but I wonder in what ways you feel like that being from a smaller town plays out in terms of mental health.
When we talk about cultures, we automatically think of, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, these major, racial groups. But we don't think about everybody's geographical backgrounds and stuff is also part of our cultural makeup.
Sure.
And when I first moved here, I thought it was funny, but nobody else did. I had gone to a workshop, and it was in Charlotte, and it was on cultural diversity. It was something we were forced into doing. And so there was an African-American woman who was teaching the class, and she was talking about the cultural differences between white people and Hispanic people, white people and black people, white people and Asian people. And then she said, is there any other group that you want to talk about? And I said, yeah. And she said, what? I said, white redneck males.
Uh-oh.
And she kind of went like, excuse me? And kind of ended there.
Yeah.
But I was kind of being serious. I mean, there is a whole culture here in the mountains that's not the same as in Florida or in New York, or it's a different upbringing, different Your bottle just exploded.
That's that new Powerade.
Yeah, that's
Extra power.
Wow.
It's got extra power in there. We had a flickering light one time. We were wondering whether that was our ghost. Remember the light that kept...
It was, yes.
We couldn't get that to figure out. Every now and then you get a little haunting in here, but...
Okay.
Yeah. It's a...
I didn't bring my sage.
Right. We may have to sage it up.
There's some... my neighbors have some livestock in it. They kill chickens occasionally, so I'm pretty sure that was a poultrygeist.
Poltergeist. That is the best dad joke I've heard today.
Sorry. I had to... Please don't fire me.
So, going back to that, what you were just talking about, Appalachian culture in general, I think, is one of, we take a lot of pride in being okay, or like doing it ourselves and pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps. And a lot of it's like that rugged, almost that rugged kind of individualism sort of concept. Does that make mental health care in an area like this difficult? I mean, and I guess what I'm asking is does it make it difficult? Does that mindset make it difficult for people to seek mental health care treatment?
More so with males. More so with males.
That's honestly where I was going.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily this region. I think it can be pretty,
right.
Universal. But I think we were having this conversation the other day in one of the groups that I do about how women are, if a woman has a meltdown and she says, I'm scared, I'm worried, I'm freaked out, I'm whatever, everybody's like, okay, that's, I understand, that's okay. But a man from the time that he's a little boy is kind of told, well, man up. Don't be a little girl. Don't be a wuss.
Right. Rub some dirt on it. Let's go. Yeah.
And so as a result, a lot of men grow up with the only negative emotion that they can express is anger. Because anger's okay. It's okay to be pissed off, but it's not okay to be scared. Or to be depressed, or to be worried, or Yeah,
I know, especially it's, I know a lot of my male friends around here. It's, it would almost be, I know some of them in which, to them, it would almost be like going back on their family to try to admit that they have a problem. And, I wonder how that mindset, we talk about, they talk about generational curses, things that pass down through family, through into children, into all this. I wonder how that plays out around here, because one of the things we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast, and I think it might have been you that asked this question to somebody, and I thought this was a very good point. America, small town America, and Appalachia in general went through, especially, we talk about all the time these closed factories that are right here. Small town America changed in a big way in the 90s. I think especially with NAFTA and CAFTA. And, I wonder how that, you asked the question to somebody, and I don't remember who it was, but you asked, do you think that the closing of these things and that rapid change that we saw when all these mills went over and people lost their jobs en masse, you asked, how do you think that, did it kill the spirit of small town like Spruce Pine or whatever? Do you see any of that? Because I find that it kills that entrepreneurial spirit. It kills that thing. And you know, when mom and daddy are on government assistance, and then the next generation's on government assistance, then the next generation, it just when you're growing up in that environment, it has to kill that, doesn't it?
I'm kind of smiling because when I was in grad school, when I first went into grad school, the college that I went to, the university I went to, their requirement was your first semester of grad school, you had to come up with whatever your thesis was going to be, your final thesis was going to be. You had to do a draft, you had to present it, it had to be approved. And then basically the next 3 years, 4 years, all your work was somehow, with that. Well, I was putting myself through grad school working at social services in New York. And so I was kind of, I said, well, I'm going to do multi-generational poverty.
Wow.
So I submitted that. No, it's too general. You're going to make it more specific. So I started researching, and I found all this information on multi-generational poverty in rural Appalachia. Now, I'm in New York. I never had a clue I was going to move to the Appalachian Mountains.
Right.
Never. I didn't even know that was. And that's what I ended up doing my master's thesis on.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And then I ended up moving here. It was really strange. But yeah, there is a pattern. It is a pattern. A lot of times it becomes accepted. Like, well, my mom got supplements, got assistance, and her mom got assistance, so I'm going to get assistance, I think it demotivates, if that's a word, people.
Yeah, disincentivizes.
Yeah.
People. Yeah. Is there such thing as a poverty mindset, you think?
I think there can be a sense of hopelessness and helplessness that can lead to that. I mean, if people have been beat down enough that they feel that it ain't getting any better, so why try? They're not going to.
And when you've never had an example.
Right.
Think about how many people we grew up with that, by no fault of their parents or anybody, but just never had an example of what it's like to manage money well.
Right.
Of what it's like to, have an entrepreneurial drive.
I wonder how much of that, too, goes back to the education system, because we weren't taught that. We're not taught how to manage money.
Well, hell, nobody is.
No.
That's the problem.
I know.
Nobody gets taught that.
We're not taught how to manage money. I know there's entrepreneurship classes now.
Thank God.
I know.
Yeah.
So that's a step in the right direction for sure. Why aren't we teaching psychology in high school level? I feel like that should be taught at high school level too.
It is, isn't it?
I don't think
Not that we did.
Oh, really? I took it in high school. They don't
No.
here?
I don't believe so. I don't know he's taking sociology because he's at the early college with Ryder.
Right.
And he's doing college level classes too. But no, I don't think any kind of psychology, sociology, anthropology, none of that's
I didn't know that. Okay.
here. As far as I know, now don't quote me on that. I don't know, internet. Don't crucify me. But I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Well, you'd have to think though that if you were taught the basics of psychology, and just that it's okay to not be okay, that what those thoughts in your head or what you're going through has some sort of scientific basis.
Well, it's got an emotional reason, a physiological reason. It's got a reason for popping into your head.
Right, and it's not just something that just happens and then you think you're the only one that it's ever happened to,
Yeah.
I would think that would be invaluable, But we never got offered that, I know. I don't know about now, but...
Especially kids today, man. Social media is hard on kids. Especially young girls, young women.
Do you see that in your practice?
Yeah.
How does social media affect mental health, do you think?
I
mean, that's a
generally
huge
don't
question.
work with kids.
Right.
I have worked with teenagers, with adolescents, but not little kids. But I have seen a lot of pressure on young women with social media to meet these unrealistic expectations.
Sure.
You know, like we were talking about the Barbie. You know, and you have to be a certain way, and you have to have a certain amount of money, and you've got to look a certain way, and be a certain weight, and be, and if you're not that way, you don't feel equal. You don't feel whole.
Right.
And then, of course, bullying is at an all-time low. High, excuse me. Yeah. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I do not remember bullying when I was in high school. Not bad, anyhow.
I don't remember it bad. I mean, it happened, but it wasn't. I think it's social media makes it easy to bully because you can other people. It's like, or it's so easy to get a group think mentality to go after somebody else.
Well, if you're online, rather than in person, there's no threat of physical violence. If you're bullying someone in person, there's always that inherent risk of physical violence. Someone's going to fight back. There's that risk there. But when you remove that risk, I mean, you can go on the internet for 2 seconds and see that all bets are off.
Yep.
People say the most unimaginably horrible things to each other on the internet.
And, I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's they get this keyboard courage or something, when they're doing that. Or if while they're doing this, they lose for a second. For a second, they lose the understanding that that's a human being on the other side of that.
I think that's a part of it, too.
That there's a human being reading that and feeling that,
Well, I think we forget that we're Homo sapiens. We're animals.
Yeah.
And we are not evolutionarily, all of this has changed so much in the last
so fast
100 years. And then you forget 100 years, take the last 20 years and think about how fast things have changed and how quickly these social media platforms have become so prominent. And then you add that into something that's not evolutionarily capable of dealing with the emotions and the things that come along with it. Then
so our technology has evolved exponentially faster than we are biologically and psychologically, and we can't keep up. We're still in fight or flight mode.
Yeah. And it makes you think if this had come along in a 10,000 year increment, maybe better.
Right.
But it came on in literally
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, the past 5 years has been insane.
It's wild. It's crazy to me.
I just don't understand.
And I didn't realize how much social media impacted people until 9/11.
Yeah.
And it was, I was working in Marion in public mental health then, and I would have clients come in and say to me, "Oh God, I'm just the anxiety. I can't sleep at night. I keep, every time I keep watching that film clip, it makes me anxious." I'm like, "Why are you watching the film clip?
Right.
You saw what happened. It didn't change. Why are you watching the same? CNN ran that film clip a zillion times, over and over and over again. So sometimes we need to unplug.
For sure.
Sometimes we just need to unplug, and not be, fixated on the TV and on the computer and, and watching every little detail of everything.
I remember that, James. That's the reason they developed the ticker on the bottom of the news screen, is because they had to figure out some way to tell other news when they covered 9/11 for literally a year straight. Yeah. That was all they talked about.
Non-stop.
Yeah. Kind of sticking on that same theme. Did you see that during COVID as well? People
now that you say that,
were very anxious just because it was there. Yeah,
and they read. Well, I read this and I read that, and I'm like,
yeah.
Did you really read, or did you just see a meme on the internet?
Yeah, you saw a 5-minute
difference.
clip on. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Gosh, is that has to be something that? Can you speak more on that? How people just in terms of the mental health fallout of COVID, what else are you dealing with? Are you seeing an uptick in other things afterwards or during? During, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of anxiety. There was, I hate to use this word usually, paranoia, but to a certain degree, let's say hypervigilance. Let's use that word instead, hypervigilance. Understood.
and people getting angry at each other because they got sick.
Yeah.
Now, I couldn't understand that. I mean, if somebody caught the flu, you'd say, I'm so sorry you're sick. And now, oh, yeah, COVID, you better not start come near me. You know, they would react.
That's something I personally experienced when I was I was one of the first in the county to be exposed to it. And I didn't get it this time. I tested negative, but I was still quarantined for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And there was a couple of people at work who were just like irate. And it blew my mind. I was like, for real?
It really surprised me how much of that I saw too.
Yeah.
Like people you would not expect to be that way either.
How you can't help it. Like it's not like
well,
I went out
supposed to know. You know?
Right.
You know. And
yeah, I remember on Facebook when the first 1 or 2 people got, caught it in Mitchell County. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like a witch hunt. Who is it? Mm-hmm. Who is it? I don't know who it is. Who is it? I mean, it was.
Get your pitchforks and torches out.
Yeah.
Yep. Here we go.
I know. Well, I don't know. That's just so crazy to me. You know what I mean? But I mean, it just goes to show you people are fragile.
Dude,
you know?
We can go back to herd mentality, tribalism like that. And COVID really showed, I think, the world just how quickly we can devolve into tribalism.
Again, while we're not prepared for this rapidly changing world that we live in. And that's a perfect example.
Yeah, it
Boom,
is.
here it comes. And everybody loses their collective mind overnight.
Yes.
It's just insane to me. That's absolutely insane to me. Gosh, what was I had one more question about that, but I forgot about it. But anyway, so going back to the small town like mentality stuff, what do you think? Do you feel like the stigma around mental health in general, I guess, is beginning to wane? And do you see it in this small setting right here? Do you see people more actively seeking mental health treatment?
I think so. And one thing that I've noticed recently that I find very encouraging is that certain medical clinics are becoming very comprehensive and bringing on therapists and social workers.
That's so good.
Yeah. I mean, they're starting to, to take it as a holistic approach, which I think is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. I know there's challenges that arise when you're dealing with a small town like this. I know that I've personally experienced it. I know that facilities that operate in such a small town have trouble staffing and a lot of turnover. And I know that's me personally. And I don't I'm not going to name the name of the business or whatever, but I was just disappointed that it seemed like you would get with a therapist. In this case, it was one of my children. And then a month later, another therapist.
Right.
It's impossible to build a good therapy relationship when that happens. Yeah. And that's difficult. Mm-hmm. And I know. What are the can you speak to the challenges? Because I know every business on earth is having trouble being staffed nowadays.
Yeah, they are. And mental health facilities are no exception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure.
I was, this was like maybe a year or two ago. I was driving to Boone, and I think it's Seven Devils. Is that little town you go through? Yeah. I was going through there, and there is a counseling center that's there, and I don't remember the name of it, but they had a sign out front: help wanted, therapist needed, and I'm like, I've never seen that before. I've never seen
right.
For therapists. And one of the things that I do in my work is I'm a clinical supervisor. Mm-hmm. So like when someone first gets out of college, they got to work for a couple years under a clinical supervisor before they can take their test and get their full licensure. Okay. So I've had a lot of interns over the years. Mm-hmm. And I contract with different agencies that employ them, and the directors of these agencies are like emailing me, do you know any licensed therapists? We are so short-handed. And I'm like, no. I mean, I guess it's every profession.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's every profession.
Gosh, and that's so crazy. We had Senator Ralph Heist on here, and he said that what was it he said with, I think it was with nurses, or was it with teachers?
I think it was teachers.
Remember he said there was like 55, wasn't it like, they thought that about 55,000 teachers like got out of the profession during COVID, or was it nurses or something like that, or just healthcare professionals, something like this.
I don't remember.
It was a massive number, and you're like, no wonder. And I think that's that way with you had a lot of older people.
It was nurses.
Remember he was talking about, people that would work into retirement, age. They basically during COVID were like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is a massive number of people, especially when it comes to healthcare, and I would imagine that mental health care is no exception to that.
It's a very multifaceted issue. I think there's a lot of very complex reasons that go into why everywhere is short-staffed right now.
Yep.
As a species, we try to dumb everything down and simplify it to its simplest form, but really that's a very complex problem that I don't have a solution to.
I don't either.
I don't know that there's one inside.
Have more babies.
Right.
I guess.
I almost wonder if it goes in cycles, and I'm just guessing this right here.
It very, very well could be.
I mean, because I remember times when if someone lost, you held on to your job because if you lost it, it might take you months to get another job, and now it's like shifted around where there's way more jobs than there are workers.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if it's just like a cycle, and then eventually that's going to go back to the way it was.
It probably will.
I wonder how much it had to do with baby boomers retiring too.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, that was a huge part of the population.
Oh, I'm sure, and that's exactly what you're dealing with. They're all of retirement age now.
Yeah. And there's just not the people to replace them.
Goodness gracious. But when he told us that, it was like an astounding number. I wish I could remember it off the top of my head. I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And then you couple that with $20 an hour being the new, $12 an hour with inflation and all the other socioeconomic challenges that come along with that.
That's a good question. That's something I thought about when I was mowing the yard yesterday, thinking about all I wanted to ask you about. How much of mental health, in your experience in a town like this, do you feel like can be traced back to financial insecurity? Or just socioeconomic insecurity in general?
Is there
housing?
That's a good question. There? Yeah. Well, I never really looked at it that way, but struggling financially is a stressor.
Extremely.
And stress adds to substance use. It adds to depression. It adds to anxiety. So I guess it would just be a natural outcome. Yeah.
Well, what made me think about that was just thinking about how many people I know that I look at them and I'm like, I have no earthly idea how you make ends meet.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how I make ends meet most of the time, and I'm one of the luckier ones probably. Yeah. But I look at people and I think to myself, I'm like, how in the world are you doing this?
Well, and you add to it all those stressors and those stress responses, plus the fact that they're not able to do anything to truly self-care because they're in survival mode. They don't have time for entertainment. They don't have time to take mental health days. They don't have time to do anything that they enjoy. So that just compiles on top of the problem too.
I know. And we've talked many times about getting people out and involved in the community, going to see live music. We've talked a lot about that on here. And then we've talked about several times like, well, there's a lot of people that just can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
How do you get people out to support those type of things when they're living paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet to begin with? Yeah.
That goes back to my question that I've asked several times on here is how do we get people's gross GDP, their household GDP up to a point where they can focus or at least look at the prospect of entertainment.
Yeah.
Because I know some people, they go to work, they come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home. They may go to the grocery store. That's it, man. Survival mode. It's
Well, I think about people. I'm like, where do these people like blow off steam? Where do you have fun? Where do you do? I think the answer, the more that I've looked into it, is they don't.
They don't, and it's no wonder we have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Or they do in an unhealthy manner, such as drugging or drinking or being
abusive.
Domestic abuse.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
It's just so, it always amazes me how interconnected, how closely entwined the economic health of an area, the socioeconomic health of an area is to the mental health of it, the people that live there. I mean, you think about places like in West Virginia and things like this. That's no wonder that was the epicenter of the prescription drug, epidemic.
Yep.
I want to ask you about that too. That was another thing I thought about. Obviously, I think we know SSRIs and things like that are probably overprescribed. In general, do you think that pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that, do you think they unhealthily push all these drugs in particular in Appalachia? Do you feel like that's something that you see a lot around here?
I don't know if it's particular to this area. I think in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't go on broadcast TV and not see 3 or 4 commercials an hour for a drug for
brought
this
to
and a
you
drug
by
for that.
Moderna. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a product and it's got to be marketed. So
Exactly. We're the only, Rogan talks about this all the time ad nauseum, but we're the only country on earth besides New Zealand that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise on television and media.
It blows my, it's insane.
Really? I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, we're the only, and New Zealand's is very restricted.
I started
like
to say
it's very restricted.
Extremely progressive, almost to a fault. Like I don't see how they.
But we have no regulations on pharmaceutical advertisement whatsoever.
It's so funny how my views on that have changed over the years. I used to be like a complete laissez-faire free market guy. And now, as I get older, I see the nuance in these issues, and I'm like, okay, regulation is not such a bad thing.
Yeah, well, especially for stuff like that, because you look at the crisis that it caused. I mean, we're pushing drugs and pushing drugs and pushing drugs, and what's so funny is that, like, if you ever thought, it's just like during COVID, that was kind of my response, was like, I can understand pushing vaccines and things like that, but let's also push people to be healthy as well. Right. Mentally and physically healthy, because if you're mentally and physically healthy, you're able to deal with the mental fallout of a pandemic and able to deal better with the disease itself if you're physically healthy. It seems like we've created this culture, and my grandmother's a perfect example, and she was definitely not a drug addict or anything like that, but she was convinced, and she was 96 when she died a couple of years ago, so she was convinced, a pill fix everything. She had a pill for everything. Why don't you just take a pill? And she had this bowl. This is no joke. She had a bowl that she kept under the oven. And she would just pull it out. And there was just prescription bottles in there that she had got over the years. Some of them were 10, 12, 15, 20 years old. Ain't no telling how long we've been in. And then there was just loose pills just in this bowl. Loose pills. And she's like, just take a pill. Why don't you if you just take a pill, everything. But that's, it also goes back. She was also of that generation that, they didn't even, she told me several times that they didn't know they were poor until the government came in here in the 70s and told them they were poor.
Yeah.
President Johnson, I guess it was the 60s, Great Society or whatever.
Yep.
So, and I've heard so many old timers say that, well, hell, we didn't even know we were poor until President Johnson told us we were.
Well, most of them had never left the holler, so what did they have?
Right.
For a comparison.
Well, and then you start bringing in your government welfare programs, and that's when people's drive started to die.
Well, it incentivized or it de-incentivized you to work, because if you worked, you lost your benefits.
Right. And then you start bringing in all these other things. So now you've got, you can't just go out and find a natural cure outside like all you did forever. Go get some yellow root and some whatever, and you could make any salve you wanted to. That's what all the old timers did. Right. But now it's like, here, we got a pill for that.
Well, you know what really, really bothers me is that this is just a little pet peeve of mine. There's a commercial for, I can't tell you what drug it is. I don't remember. but it's for tardive dyskinesis. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
It's when somebody is on psychotropic medications for psychotic disorders. If they're on it for a long period of time, they get a side effect called tardive dyskinesis, where they jerk and they have facial tics and things like that. So it's a medicine to get rid of that. So in other words, they're getting a side effect from a medicine. Now there's a medicine to get rid of the side effect.
Right.
And then the side effect medicine has side effects. And I'm like, yeah.
It's a self-perpetuating money machine.
Yeah.
Profit machine.
And we used to talk about this so much. Like, remember, this was the talking points of the left in this country. People forget that. 10 years ago, that's what you heard Democrats say. You know? They were the ones that were like, hey, you know, look, these pharmaceutical companies, they're screwing all of us. And then now, after we've swapped. We've swapped.
Yeah.
And I'm not making a political commentary on that. I'm just saying that that's crazy.
The world is a bizarre
That something
place.
is happening.
Yeah.
We are losing our collective minds.
And what is it? We don't know.
I don't know. But
People just don't realize.
people just don't understand. This is
I think, you know, I think part of the problem is that we are in a full throttle kind of society.
Yeah.
You know, in a time of our lives, we're full throttle. Hurry, 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 get here, get here. Speed, go through the drive-through, do this, you know, kind of thing. And so we don't want to take the time to heal from something. We want it gone now.
Right.
Take a pill, get it gone. You know, don't try to work through. So I think a lot of times that is the philosophy about mental health too. I'm depressed, give me a pill. I don't want to go talk to some therapist and go through all that and do the work. You know, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to feel bad. So give me a pill.
Yep.
You know, and that's just putting a Band-Aid on it. That's not, you know, getting to the root of the problem.
Well, it's funny, in medicine, there's two types of philosophies in medicine. There's allopathic medicine, which is your MDs and your MD medical schools, and then osteopathic medicine, which is your DOs and DO schools, doctor of osteopathy. And your allopathic medicine treats the symptoms, whereas osteopathic takes a more holistic approach and treats the patient, not the symptom. And for so long, that's been the medical world, including mental health, for, gosh, I mean, as long as medicine has been, I don't want to say commercialized, but
modern medicine.
Yeah, modern medicine has been allopathic medicine, is you treat the symptom, and then you treat that symptom, and that causes something else, and you treat that symptom. Going back to your ad that you were talking about, that's exactly what that philosophy is perpetuated. And I really like the fact that DOs are starting to gain some traction. And I mean, they're every bit as much of a doctor as a MD. They practice medicine just the same. They just have a different approach, a more holistic approach. And I don't use it. A lot of times people hear holistic and they think, you know, going out in the garden and making salves, and where there may be a time and place for that. I think getting away from that, you know, is largely why we live as long as we do now.
Right.
You know, but I'm a scientist, so I'm always going to kind of bend towards that. But anyway,
I wonder how much that type of way of doing things really just perpetuates this whole thing, where I guess what I'm thinking about is, if you had the option to mentally slug out your problems with a therapist, but you knew, hey, this is going to take probably 6 months.
And it's going to suck.
And we're going to bring up stuff that's going to hurt you. Yeah.
Or take this pill.
Right.
But I wonder if you knew what the side effects were of what you're taking. If you were actually, and I know you get that little, this may cause diarrhea and may cause, and, you know, you get the little thing at the end of it while the people are running through the meadow and, you know, everybody's looking happy and like it's the greatest time of their life. You know, I wonder if you were aware of what you're giving up on the back end, how many people would just be willing to slug down a pill?
I would say still the majority, because
I think so too.
It's easier to deal with for some reason, and I'm generalizing here, but I feel like it's easier to deal with some physiological side effects than to sit and tackle your demons and admit to yourself your faults, where you need to grow as a person, because those growing pains really suck.
Yeah. Do you feel like just putting somebody on a medicine regimen, do you feel like that itself disincentivizes people to seek actual counseling and treatment?
It can. It can, yeah. Like I said, people want the quick fix. They don't want to. A lot of times people will start therapy and realize it's not the therapist patting them on the back. You're okay. You know, it's that, you know, we're going to talk about stuff you might not want to talk about. And it's going to, we're going to bring up some memories, and it might hurt you. You might cry. And a lot of them don't want to do that. They don't want to do it.
Through that.
No. But I try to tell people that if you just, I mean, I'm not against psychiatric medications. I think they definitely have their purpose. Definitely.
Right. Sure.
But I think it should always be along, you know, with therapy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
You're stopping the symptom, but you're not addressing the root.
Right.
You know, I was always for medicine. I sought it before I took Zoloft. I thought, you know, the first time I kind of had a down in the dumps thing, I had a great experience with it. I know people that have gotten way tore up on Zoloft, and I had a great experience with it. I couldn't say enough good things about it. But it was one of those I was working with a therapist at the time. It was something to kind of help me off, and I just slowly waned off on it and realized, you know, like, I don't really, you know, I coupled it with treatment. I coupled it with actual counseling and talking and you know, and then, you know, so next time, this is years later, probably 10, 12, even years later, like, I was kind of feeling, you know, like I needed some help. And I started the same sort of thing again. And I sought treatment at the time. But I was kind of one of those, like, I was like, I don't know if I have time for this. You know, I was busy. I had kids. I had things. I need to go now, you know. And so I thought to myself, I was taking the medicine, taking the medicine. I feel good. I feel great. I was like, I don't think I'm depressed anymore. I think it'll be fine. Like, and so I was just like, I'll just go off this. I don't even need this anymore. That started a cycle. It probably lasted about 3 months. I was fine for first 3 weeks.
Really?
Then it started to come back. And I was like, oh no, I did this the wrong way. And I knew immediately. I was like,
yeah, well, you'll withdraw from some of them.
And it took a while. Like, it literally, I don't know if it might have not been 3 weeks, but it was a good while. Enough to where I thought, oh, I'm fine, you know? Like, I'm good. But then here it came. It just came back big time.
Oh, it can really throw your brain chemicals out of balance.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And so I started, I was like, okay, let me call the doctor. Let me get an appointment. I was like, I need to get an appointment. Then I just started taking the medicine again. I was like, oh, I'll just take one. I'll be all right. I'll be fine. Whatever. So I go to the doctor. I told him, you know, kind of what I'd done. And I said, there was another reason that the medicine had some side effects I wasn't super crazy about. So I told him about those. And he's like, well, why don't you know.
Try different medicine.
Medicine.
Detox all over again.
And so, I'd been taking the same medicine I had been taking for probably maybe, 5 days until I could get to the doctor, to the appointment, and then immediately go on to another one. Now, I consider myself a fairly adjusted person. 3 days later, I was on a Saturday morning at 6:30 busting the doctor's office. I hadn't slept in 2 days. And I literally was in there telling him, I was like, if something doesn't change, I'm talking within the next 8 hours here, I need to go somewhere, and something needs to happen. I just want to go to sleep. Just put me out until I'm normal again. And it scared me so much, because I literally almost lost my mind. And I was looking, I don't even know who the person in the mirror was. I was just losing it and irrationally losing it about things, you know? And that just really scared me to death.
Yeah.
You know? And I didn't realize those psychotropic medications actually, and I don't think a lot of people understand what they do, you know?
Yeah, they're powerful. I mean, they totally alter your brain chemicals. You know, sometimes that's what's needed.
Sure.
Sometimes that's what's needed, you know, but, you know, when I moved here in 2000, long story short, I moved here because I was dating somebody from Spruce Pines, and I moved to be with him, and we got married, and a couple years later he died of pancreatic cancer. So been through this a couple times.
Oh, wow.
And anyhow, I remember going to see my doctor when I first found out that he had like 3 months to live. And this doctor's no longer around here. Very nice man. But he said to me, okay. And he starts writing me all these prescriptions for like a couple antidepressants and some Xanax and I'm like, no, no, this is not going to I have to process this. I have to have the ability to process this.
Sure.
And one thing that a lot of medications will do for people is they'll take away the pain. They'll take away the bad feelings.
Sure.
Sooner or later, you've got to face it. Sooner or later, you're going to have to sit there and process it and get through it.
How much of that do you think is, mental health is a unique healthcare field because you can't just send a test out.
Right. It's not
or
like
you can't
surgery.
biopsy it, or you can't look inside your ear and go, and then see how depressed you are.
Right.
And like there's a certain amount of like you're having to trust.
It's very subjective.
Yes. It's very subjective. Like you have to trust. And that makes me wonder, like, why is it that general practitioners, like doctors, are able to subscribe psychotropic medication? To me,
some won't. There's a lot of primary care doctors will prescribe simple antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicines. But when you start to get into mood stabilizers and antipsychotics, many of them will say, no, you need to see a psychiatrist.
right. You need to see.
Yeah, that's out of their, comfort.
Right.
level,
Yeah. I often wonder how much that would just making that a thing. I understand like simple, stuff, but I mean, like when it comes to like antipsychotics, why is just your general family doctor that knows how to knock your knees and stuff just able to throw out that kind of medication? That seems a little.
They usually don't.
Yeah, they usually don't. Okay.
Yeah. That's tantamount to them like prescribing some kind of really hardcore cardiac drug or something like that. So
I guess so.
Send it to a specialist.
Yeah, they'll send you to a
send you
specialist.
I got you.
That's their license on the line too.
Right.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point a second ago too, Chase, about that when someone, if I were to go to my primary doctor today and say, oh, I've got this terrible stomach pains, she can, order an ultrasound, or she can order, a CAT scan, and you can see what's in there and what's causing all this, scope, whatever. But if I went to go see her and say, I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that, I'm feeling, she's going by my version of this.
Right.
There's, like you said, there's nothing in black and white. There's nothing. There's no picture they can take of a depression or of an anxiety or, and as mental health clinicians, we're kind of limited, especially when we're doing substance abuse assessments or diagnoses, by what we're being told. We're
sure.
We might know that, hey, there's more going on than they're telling me, but unless I can get either collateral evidence that this is something, I've got to go with what the person's telling me. And even when your gut's telling you, like, this is there's more than this going on. Yeah, so it does kind of limit you a little bit. Yeah.
Very subjective.
Do you catch yourself psychoanalyzing everybody?
No.
That's good. That's good. Because I feel like a lot of people be like, oh, man, I would psychoanalyze everybody. And,
no, I've had people say that to me. Now that I'm back in the single world, I wouldn't go out with her. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you going to pay me?
I can turn it off. Yeah, I can turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to pay me a fee, I'm not going to do that.
It's kind of like me. Every time I walk into someplace, I'm looking at Laura makes fun of me all the time. She's like, quit looking at the construction in here. And I'm like, but I do it just without even thinking about it.
I'm
I
not
just start
doing
looking.
chemistry right now. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, Josh, anything else you wanted to cover?
No. thank you so much for doing this. This has been awesome. I've
you
really thoroughly enjoyed this.
I think she's our new go-to mental health.
Yep.
So if we ever run into anything, we need some.
Yep. Do you take insurance?
I don't. I'm private pay only. But thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous about this, but you made me very not nervous. So.
Well, it's like I say, it's one of those things that for anybody that's never done this before, and heck, me and Josh experienced the same thing when we first started doing this. It's one of those when you get into it, after a while you just get a good conversation going, and then it's really easy. You know what I mean? It's really easy. But so if somebody wants to find your books on Amazon, right?
Yes, they're both on Amazon. They're both in. I'm pretty sure they're in Barnes and Noble by now, and you can get it from the publisher itself, which is Austin McCauley. It's just as easy to get it on Amazon.
I got you.
Yeah.
We will link that down below. Where can people find you and your practice?
I mostly do telehealth.
Okay.
I do have an office on Locust Street, Lower Street. And my phone number is listed there.
Okay.
Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So you taking patients?
Oh yeah.
Yes. All right. Go and call you. I need some right now. Take us out of here, Josh.
All right, man. All righty. Everybody, thank you so much. Please like, share, subscribe. That really helps us out. That pushes this out. The more comments you leave, the more likes you give us, the more you share this out, the more the algorithm will throw it in front of other people. And these conversations, I think, are extremely important. Mental health is so stigmatized still to this day. In the year 2023, the year of our Lord, it is still very much stigmatized.
Break the stigma.
And
the stigma.
We need to have these conversations. But check our merch out, shophollercast.com. We still have all kinds of merch. Use the promo code HollerCast to get 10% off of your order. And it's a great way to stay in shape. Till next time, love you all. Peace out.
Peace.